Maybe you just clicked out of curiosity. Or maybe, without realizing it, you were searching for a quiet place where words flow gently and silence is part of the conversation. I wrote this story with care, like stitching together memories, pain, and moments of discovery, hoping that somewhere along the way, you might see yourself in it. If you do, even for a moment, stay a while. Listen as long as you can, and if you feel like it, drop a little sign. It doesn't have to be anything big. Sometimes a simple "I'm here" changes everything. If this resonates, consider liking, sharing, or leaving a comment. And if you want to join the journey, subscribing quietly is always welcome. I never thought I'd be the kind of mom to throw a birthday party at the local community center, but when you're a single parent with a 7-year-old who's obsessed with Minecraft, you get creative. I'm Rachel, 32, and my son Ethan had been talking about his birthday for weeks. He didn't ask for toys or a trip to Disney. He just wanted a cake shaped like a Minecraft creeper and a party with his little school friends. So I stayed up until almost 2 a.m. the night before, rolling out green fondant, cutting sugar blocks, and making sure every little square looked perfect. It wasn't fancy, but it was made with love. For once, I wanted Ethan to have a memory that wasn't tainted by the chaos of my family, especially my parents and my younger sister, Samantha. My parents have always worshipped the ground Samantha walks on. She's the creative one, the fun one, the free spirit. In reality, she's the type who burns bridges for fun and expects the world to rebuild them for her. I've been the responsible one my whole life, which in my family translates to boring. The party room was small but cozy, with green balloons, pixelated plates I bought off Amazon, and a paper banner Ethan helped me tape up. He was running around with his friends, grinning so hard his dimples were showing, when the door finally creaked open. Samantha sauntered in, 20 minutes late, wearing oversized designer sunglasses. Inside, she was holding a glossy white box from some trendy bakery in downtown Portland, the kind of place that charges $90 for a 6-inch cake. "I brought a real cake," she said, smirking as she set the box on the table next to mine. My mom laughed and swirled her cheap white wine. "Oh, honey, Sam's always been the creative one. Yours looks homemade. Bless your heart." I bit my tongue. Ethan ran over, eyes wide, thinking his cool Aunt Sam had brought him a surprise. When Samantha opened the box, it did look like a cake. Blue frosting, some plastic candles stuck in, a little messy but believable. She sliced a piece, handed it to Ethan, and everyone leaned in to watch him take a bite. The second the fork hit his tongue, I saw his smile falter. He chewed once, twice, and then his face crumpled. I smelled it before he could even spit it out. Canned dog food, layered between cheap chocolate sponge and frosting. Ethan gagged and dropped the fork, frosting smearing across his shirt. His classmates stared in shock. And then, my family laughed. Not just Samantha, my parents too. My dad even pulled out his phone and started recording, like this was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. "Come on, it's just a joke," Samantha said between cackles. "Kids need to toughen up," Dad added. "You baby him too much," Mom scolded me, sipping her wine. "He'll grow up soft if you don't stop." Ethan was crying now, full-on sobbing, his small hands clutching my shirt. I scooped him up and carried him out of that party room, past the stunned faces of his friends and the parents who couldn't believe what they'd just witnessed. Behind me, I heard Samantha's laugh echoing off the walls. I didn't even get to sing him happy birthday. I walked down the hallway of the community center with Ethan clinging to me, his face buried in my shoulder, his little fists gripping the back of my sweater like he was afraid I might let him go. His sobs were loud at first, ragged and heartbreaking, echoing against the cheap linoleum floor. Then they turned into those soft, shuddering whimpers kids make when they're too exhausted to cry anymore. Behind us, I could still hear laughter. Samantha's laugh, high and sharp, cut through the hall. My dad's voice followed. "Film it! This is gold!" I didn't turn around. Outside, the late afternoon sun hit my face, but it didn't feel warm. Ethan's shirt was smeared with green fondant and blue frosting, the smell of canned dog food clinging to it. I laid him across the back seat of my old Subaru, grabbed a towel from my gym bag, and wiped his cheeks. He flinched, like he expected me to scold him. "You didn't do anything wrong," I whispered. He nodded, but he didn't meet my eyes. By the time we got home, he had cried himself to sleep in the car, still wearing the frosting-stained shirt. I carried him upstairs, tucked him into bed, and sat there for a long while, brushing the sticky hair from his forehead. He twitched in his sleep, mumbling something I couldn't catch. My stomach twisted. He was having nightmares before the night had even started. I went downstairs and stood in the kitchen, staring at the empty counter where his birthday cake should have been sitting, waiting for candles. Instead, the creeper cake I'd spent hours making was still in its box, untouched. That night, I couldn't bring myself to call anyone. I didn't post on Facebook. I didn't even text my best friend. Instead, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of cars on the wet street. My mind replayed every detail. My mother's smirk when she said, "Bless your heart." My dad lifting his phone to record instead of stepping in. Samantha's fake concern, pretending she'd brought something real. Ethan's face when the laughter started. Each memory hit like a stone in my chest. I felt angry, but anger wasn't the loudest thing in the room. It was betrayal. The people who were supposed to love my son, protect him, had humiliated him for entertainment, and then laughed when he cried. I thought about calling them, screaming at them, demanding an apology. But a small voice in my head whispered that it wouldn't matter. My family didn't apologize. Not to me. And certainly not to a 7-year-old boy they'd already decided was too sensitive. So I lay there in the dark, jaw clenched until it hurt, a single thought looping over and over. They can't keep doing this to us. The morning after Ethan's ruined birthday, my house felt hollow. The balloons I'd taped up were sagging. The untouched creeper cake still sat in its box on the counter, its bright green fondant a reminder of how much love and how little respect we got from my own family. I tried to distract myself with chores. I gathered the party supplies and loaded them into my old Subaru. When I opened the glove compartment to grab some napkins, a thick envelope slid out and landed on the passenger seat. I frowned. I didn't remember putting anything there. Inside was a stack of papers. A loan contract for $60,000 from a local credit union. A business registration under my full legal name with a fake LLC I'd never heard of, Evergreen Consulting. Pay stubs from a company that didn't exist. At first, I just stared at it, convinced I must be reading it wrong. Then my eyes found the signature line. It was my name, but it wasn't my handwriting. A cold wave rolled through me. My hands started shaking, not from fear, but from the kind of clarity that only comes after too much pain. I remembered giving Samantha a ride 2 weeks ago to a spa appointment downtown. She'd dumped her purse and phone in the glove compartment for safety. I hadn't thought twice about it. Now, the dots connected in a sickening click. She had used my name, my social security number, and forged my signature to take out a $60,000 loan. And she left the evidence in my car. For a moment, I just sat there in the driveway, gripping the papers so hard they crumpled, my mind flickering between rage and disbelief. My parents had laughed while my son cried. They'd told me I was too soft, that Ethan needed to toughen up. And now my sister had stolen my identity, betting I'd be too overwhelmed or too weak to fight back. Something snapped, not loudly, not with yelling or tears. It was quiet. I realized that screaming at them, begging for respect, had never worked. They fed on my reactions. This time, they wouldn't get any. I leaned back in the driver's seat, staring at the neighborhood street lined with maple trees, and felt a strange calm settle in. If they wanted me to be the boring, invisible one, fine. I would be invisible. And while they were laughing, I would be building the kind of silence that destroys. In that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Samantha. I wasn't going to call my parents. I was going to document everything and let her hang herself with the rope she handed me. The pain of last night was still there, but it had hardened into something else. Not vengeance, not yet. Resolve. I tucked the papers back into the envelope, placed it gently on the passenger seat, and for the first time in 24 hours, I smiled. They had no idea what was coming. I didn't confront Samantha. I didn't call my parents. Instead, I turned my kitchen table into a war room. The first thing I did was scan every document: the $60,000 loan contract, the fake LLC registration, the forged pay stubs, onto my laptop and backed them up to 2 cloud drives. I printed copies and tucked them into a folder marked Taxes, because I knew no one in my family would ever think to check there. Every move had to be calm, methodical. No yelling, no warnings. No more giving them the reactions they craved. Next came the quiet reconnaissance. I made a list of people who might have stories about Samantha, people she had burned, cheated, or humiliated. The list was longer than I expected. Melissa, her old college roommate. Samantha had stiffed her on rent 3 years ago and borrowed her laptop before disappearing for a month. Gary, the owner of a local bakery. Samantha once trashed his business online when he refused to give her a refund for a custom cake she decided she didn't like. Kyle, the ex-boyfriend. The one my parents always claimed was toxic, but I knew the truth. She drained his savings while he was going through chemo, then ghosted him. I called them one by one, voice calm and steady, like I was discussing insurance claims. Melissa immediately offered to forward screenshots of angry texts from Samantha demanding money. Gary emailed me a copy of the 1-star review Samantha left, full of insults and lies. Kyle. His voice was tired but kind. He said, "I'm not surprised. I hope she finally gets what's coming to her." Each piece of evidence felt like a quiet puzzle piece clicking into place. While I built my case in silence, I also focused on Ethan. He started therapy that week. The first session was just him drawing pictures while the counselor talked gently about birthdays and tricks that aren't funny. By the second session, he was talking about the blue cake and how he thought it meant nobody liked him. I listened from the hallway, fighting the urge to cry. Instead, I took a deep breath and reminded myself, I'm fixing this. For him. At home, I let him help me bake cookies. He pressed chocolate chips into the dough and asked, "Is this a safe cookie?" "Always, buddy," I said, and meant it. Weeks passed. My phone stayed quiet. I didn't respond to my mom's half-hearted texts asking if I'd gotten over it yet. Meanwhile, my folder of evidence grew thicker. Signed statements from people Samantha had wronged, screenshots of her lies, copies of the fraudulent loan paperwork. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't ranting. I was waiting. building a case so airtight that when I finally moved, she wouldn't see it coming. And in that quiet, something shifted. Ethan started sleeping through the night again. He laughed a little louder at cartoons. He asked if we could have a practice birthday next month, just us, and maybe cookies instead of cake. I said yes, because the real gift I was giving him wasn't just a party. It was a future without the shadow of people who thought cruelty was love. 2 weeks after Ethan's ruined birthday, I walked into Willamette Credit Union with a calmness that felt foreign. I wasn't the desperate daughter anymore. I wasn't the sister begging for respect. I was a mother on a mission. In my bag was a neat folder. Copies of the $60,000 loan contract, the fake LLC paperwork, my real signature samples from my driver's license and mortgage paperwork, a letter from my employer confirming I'd never started a consulting business. Ethan held my hand as we walked to the fraud department. He had a packet of fruit snacks in his other hand, swinging it like a little flag of victory. The bank officer, a woman named Lydia, spread the documents out on her desk, her brows furrowing deeper with each page she read. "You're telling me you didn't apply for this loan?" she asked gently. "No," I said, keeping my voice steady. "And that's not my signature." Lydia compared the forged signature to my driver's license and nodded slowly. "This is blatant," she muttered. "I'll need a few more details." I told her everything I knew, leaving out the personal drama. I didn't mention the dog food cake, or the laughter, or the betrayal. All Lydia needed to know was that someone stole my identity, and I had the proof. By the end of the meeting, she slid a packet of forms toward me. "We're opening a formal fraud investigation," she said. "You won't be held responsible for the loan, and given the evidence, the account linked to this loan will likely be frozen within the week. Ms. Parker?" "Yes?" "You're lucky you caught this early. But your sister? Well, she's going to have a very unpleasant surprise the next time she tries to use this account." I thanked her, shook her hand, and stood up. My heart wasn't racing. There was no burst of adrenaline, just a steady, satisfying calm. Outside, the sky was clear, the kind of pale blue that only happens after a Pacific Northwest rain. Ethan skipped a little as we crossed the parking lot. "Mom, did we win?" he asked. "Not yet," I said, squeezing his hand. "But we just scored the first point." As I buckled him into his booster seat, I caught my reflection in the car window. My jaw was set, my eyes sharp. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the family's punching bag. I felt untouchable, and Samantha had no idea her silent storm had already begun. By the time the bank confirmed the fraud investigation had officially started, I was already planning phase 2 of my quiet war. The financial strike was satisfying, but Sam, had built her entire self-worth around her image. She wasn't just a free spirit in the family's eyes. She was the charming, ambitious fiancée to Eric Carter, a man from one of the oldest, wealthiest families in town. If her reputation cracked, her world would crumble faster than any frozen bank account. The first step was a reminder of what she'd done. One night after Ethan went to bed, I printed a single photo from the birthday party. Ethan clutching the blue cake, frosting on his shirt, his eyes red and wet with tears. Sam mid-laugh in the background, fork raised like a trophy. I slipped the photo into a plain envelope with no note, no signature, no return address. I mailed it to her apartment. Step 2 was making myself visible where it mattered. A week later, I attended a local charity auction for the community library. I knew Eric's parents, Margaret and Charles Carter, would be there. They were on every donor list in town. I wore a simple navy dress, nothing flashy, but I walked in with a confidence I hadn't felt in years. When I introduced myself as Rachel Parker, Samantha's sister. Margaret Carter's face lit up politely. "Oh, Samantha speaks so highly of you," she said, clasping my hand. I smiled back, steady as stone. "She must have left out a few things," I said lightly. "But I'm looking forward to the wedding." That was all. No malice, no raised voice. Just a seed planted. Step 3 was the killing blow. 2 days before Sam and Eric's big engagement brunch, the Carters received a beautifully wrapped box. Inside was a menu designed to look like a tasting card from an upscale bakery. But instead of cake flavors, each page listed a fraud, a scam, or a complaint tied to Samantha. The Better Business Bureau complaint from Gary's Bakery, screenshots of angry texts to Melissa, a photo of the $60,000 forged loan paperwork with my real signature beside it, and, for the finishing touch, the birthday party photo of Ethan crying. No note, no explanation, just the truth. The day of the engagement brunch, I waited. At 11 a.m., my phone buzzed. A single text from my mother. "What did you do?" "The brunch is off. Samantha is hysterical." I didn't reply. Later, through a mutual acquaintance, I heard the full story. Sam showed up to the upscale restaurant in a $900 designer dress, expecting champagne and family photos, only to find an empty room. Eric's parents had canceled everything. They didn't even call her first. I pictured her standing there, clutching her little designer purse, realizing she wasn't the clever queen she thought she was. For the first time in years, I felt free, and the best part? No one could trace it back to me. Silent revenge is patient, and now it was personal. The morning after the engagement brunch disaster, my phone blew up with calls and texts. Not from friends or well-wishers, but from Samantha, screaming, hysterical, desperate, and from my parents, who were furious with me, blaming me for ruining her future. But I didn't answer. That afternoon, Samantha called again. This time, her voice cracked with rage and pain. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" she spat. "You laughed when my son cried." I stared at the screen, heart pounding, not from fear, but from the weight of that sentence. I didn't respond. I let the silence hang there like a guillotine, and then I hung up. From that moment on, I embraced a new strategy. Total silence. No explanations, no fights, no justifications. Because my family thrived on drama and reaction, and I was done feeding it. Meanwhile, the fallout was already happening. Neighbors who once smiled politely now glanced away. Parents at Ethan's school whispered in hushed tones. The local community, small, tight-knit, protective, had started to hear the truth. The clip of laughter from the birthday party leaked quietly at first. Samantha's mocking laughter, my parents' jeering voices, the heartbreaking sobs of a 7-year-old boy. It was spreading like wildfire. I heard about it through a teacher at Ethan's school, who called me quietly one afternoon. "They're talking about it. The whole neighborhood knows what happened," she said. "But you know what? They're on your side." Those words settled deep inside me. I sat on my porch that evening, watching the sun dip behind the trees. For the first time, I felt the scales beginning to tip. The family I'd once known was crumbling, and I didn't have to say a word. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any scream. Just when I thought the silence was enough, something unexpected happened. The clip from Ethan's birthday party, the one with Samantha's laughter, my parents' mocking voices, and that chilling line, "It's just a joke, he'll get over it," started circulating quietly in local community groups. At first, it was just whispers. A parent sharing it in a neighborhood Facebook group, a teacher forwarding it to colleagues. But soon, the ripple became a wave. Neighbors I'd barely spoken to stopped smiling in the grocery store. Parents who used to chat by the school gate crossed the street when they saw Samantha or my parents. Conversation stopped when my family entered a room. The hardest blow came when Samantha applied for a position as a school counselor at Ethan's elementary school, a role she desperately wanted to polish her image. The next day, the school's HR department called the principal. They had received a recording, just audio, no video, of the birthday party laughter and cruel comments about my son. It was enough. Samantha's interview was rescinded immediately. The principal told a colleague, "We can't have someone who mocks children working here. It's a question of trust and safety." That night, I heard through a friend that Samantha was furious and crying, but no one was on her side anymore. The community had spoken. They had replaced my silence with their voices. They had become the shield I needed when I couldn't fight openly. I sat on the porch again, watching the sunset paint the sky pink and gold. Justice wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It was quiet, but unstoppable. And for the first time, I felt hope. After everything that had happened, the humiliation, the silence, the community's quiet justice, I knew Ethan deserved something pure, something safe, something that was just for him. I reached out to Helen, the owner of the little bakery on Fifth Avenue. Helen was a kind-hearted woman in her late 60s, the kind who knew every kid in town by name and never charged extra for a smile. She'd heard about Samantha's mess through mutual friends and wanted to help. Together, we planned a small, private Minecraft-themed party at her bakery after hours. No sneers, no cameras, no hidden jokes. Ethan walked into the shop, his eyes wide with wonder as the walls were decorated with pixelated green and black banners. There was a cake, this time, a real cake, shaped perfectly like a creeper, with bright green fondant and little edible blocks. His smile lit up the room like a beacon. He ran to the table, blowing out candles with all the breath he had, surrounded by only those who loved him truly. Helen, a few close family friends, and me. For the first time in weeks, Ethan's laughter was genuine, no trace of fear, no shadows of the past party. He giggled as he played with Minecraft figurines Helen had gifted him, his cheeks rosy, eyes sparkling. I caught myself smiling so hard my cheeks hurt. Here was the son I knew, the son I'd fought so hard to protect. Meanwhile, word spread about Samantha's social downfall. No lavish parties, no fancy dinners, just silence. The same community that once celebrated her now shunned her. I pictured her alone in her expensive apartment. No one to share her victories with, no friends to console her. And in that moment, I felt a quiet kind of victory. Ethan's happiness was my true triumph, not the frozen accounts, not the canceled engagement brunch, but this night filled with love and warmth, where a little boy felt safe again. In the months that followed, Samantha quietly disappeared from our town. She moved in with distant relatives over an hour away, people who didn't know her past or the chaos she'd left behind. Her bank accounts were frozen, credit ruined, and her once glamorous social circle evaporated. The proud fiancé was now just a distant rumor whispered at PTA meetings. My parents, surprisingly, tried to reach out. A handwritten letter arrived one afternoon addressed to Ethan. Inside was a crumpled $5 bill and a brief note. "You're still family. Don't hold grudges forever." Ethan looked at the letter for a moment, then simply tore it into pieces. Without a word, I smiled at him. "Sometimes," I said softly, "peace means knowing when to walk away." That evening, we ordered Ethan's favorite, extra cheese pizza, and sat by the window as the golden sunset poured into our little apartment. Ethan devoured his slice with a grin, crumbs on his chin, eyes full of light. I watched him, feeling a quiet joy that no vindication or revenge could ever replace. The real victory wasn't in bringing Samantha down. It wasn't in the frozen accounts or canceled parties. It was in reclaiming our freedom from their cruelty, their mockery, their neglect. We were finally free. And as the sunlight warmed the room, I whispered to myself, "This is what peace looks like."